I sound like a crow. I sound like the Saturday morning crow. But I'm not. It's Art of Rock. Hello, welcome. This is it. Every week we're here. I think we're streaming. I just have no idea. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the Tongva people. I'm on their land, and you're awesome. Secondly, this is bought. Join us every Saturday here on ANGELSPIT'S Twitch or YouTube or wherever you're watching. Twitch is best because we write to MTV TV afterwards, but this is the madness right here. This is brought to you by ANGELSPIT'S Patreon. $3 a month, and you can help me keep going. Remember, when you go to a bar and someone pours you a drink, you usually charge them like that much money. Tip them that much, so you can tip me that too, and I'll give you love. ANGELSPIT'S new album is on BANDCAMP, and it's brutal, and it's terrifying, and it's damaging people. And the reviews are actually kind of good. I thought they'd hate it, but they don't. They seem to like it a lot. More music you could like a lot is the Industrial Incisions playlist, which everybody here pimps regularly. And that's a whole bunch of awesome old music and awesome new music. And you need to jump on that and fucking get that shit going, because it's just booyah. And speaking of booyah, 24 hours, 7 day a week, booyah on MTV TV. Follow their Twitch, and if you're bored, just turn it on, and I guarantee you are going to find a new favorite band. If you're in a band, send them your track. It's right there. They will play it, and you're going to find yourself a new audience. Every time you turn it on, there's just something fantastic. So welcome to Art of Rock, and when we're done, we're going to actually raid on over to MTV TV, so we're going to force feed you MTV TV whether you like it or not. Okay, Alex, you've got a question, and I want to hear that question, and it's amazing. Go.
Yeah, my question was stemming from the following situation. I was rehearsing with my bandmates, and I realized my volume was too low, and that somehow it sounded weird in my monitors. So I tried to fix it, and it didn't work. Somehow the buttons didn't do what I wanted. It was a digital desk I had, so I was trying to fix it. And just didn't work, made it worse. Several times I accidentally made my bandmates hear horrible feedback. And it was like really difficult to fix this problem in the moment. And my question is, do you have like strategies to ground yourself in such situations and to troubleshoot and not to panic? Basically that.
Awesome. Hey, Rezi, I want to hear what you have to say about this amazing question.
I think we've all been there. The first thing is, the bandmates have to be understanding. I mean, you're on the same team. It's not like you're working against each other and trying to find ways to make their lives miserable. So it's in receiving it, it's probably not as big a problem as it feels like when you're the perpetrator. But that said, give yourself the gift, your tomorrow self, of learning from that mistake and learning from how that was, because the more of those you run into, the more able you are to operate that mixer system as a musical instrument that you play. And although you're rehearsing for something that doesn't involve fiddling with those knobs because you've got a sound operator to do it, probably it's going to be a lifelong part of the rehearsal, probably, or at least a good chunk of time. So all that philosophical stuff said, I take notes on what happened, just a quick note on what the actual problem was. I try to remove some of the wrong options that existed in the first place. Like if there's a feedback loop path from a effects return, just take it off the channels, make it so that it can't get back to the wrong place. It only goes to the aux return. Or move it to channels so that it does only on the aux, headphone mix. Certain things like that. Also, having made the mistake, you're starting to rehearse the moves that do it right. So you're already in the act doing better, correcting, fixing the thing that went wrong just by going through the shocking and nerve-wracking process of fixing it once it happens. And if that's a range of moves that you didn't do and some of those that you can eliminate, practice those moves. Here's an easy set of menus that you have to get through, page through. Here's a couple of knobs that you have to turn, or here's the shortcut to make that stop immediately. It's a master mute or a bus mute or something like that. There's like, keep those things in mind and note them down. And I think two things lastly. One is eliminating the wrong options, and that's also the flip side of that is adding the easy options. So it's automating and concatenating function, turning a single knob into a macro that does more of the processes you were trying to do, whether it's levels to the aux return, and also decrease reverb time. If you can map something via MIDI remotely that does that, you're introducing more wrong, but you're also possibly eliminating a multi-step process so you can get back to focusing on doing your vocals. And lastly, stickers and visual cues so that your patches are named with, hey, remember this send B cause in the patch name, or putting a sticker on a thing for a visual cue that is the orange sticker is different than the blue sticker, and you learn that as just these are the ones that do things. So I don't know, those are the quick notes that I took. I'm sure there's a million. I hope you'll jump in and steer it back to what actually happened rather than some of this theoretical stuff, because maybe we can even go deeper.
Awesome. Thanks, man. That was awesome. If I may, always 99.9%, it's the most simple reason. It's not plugged in. It's not turned on. It's always that. Or the knob's down. Just like Resi said, having a checklist before, because the purpose of these rehearsals is to rehearse what's right and figure out what's wrong. Have the board set up ready to go so you know what the board is doing, and so you just glance over the board and something could get bumped, something could get turned off. That's why we have sound checks as well. So, if you're doing a rehearsal, maybe rehearse a sound check too. And the chick about, that's what I think. Blah. That's all I got. And you're welcome to, like Resi said, jump in and steer us back. But welcome Ivan and Vince. Ivan, what does 9 a.m. in LA feel like? Does anybody else want to jump in on this?
It feels so early.
Yes. Yes, it does. Extra early because the sun's super sunny and golden here in California. Yes, Alex.
Well, the way I solved it was just by resetting into the factory mode and then working my way back there, because then I got the feedback in control, and it takes a while, but it's faster than figuring out the problem. And maybe for the future I should just make a preset that has everything in line and go to that instead.
Yeah, a very good call. Rezi, tell me more.
I mean, it's like you just won the it's the go back to a known state. Is if you've got that in your bones, then at least you can get there. And I know it kills the moment. The other thing, and I've been guilty of this a lot. If we're running backing tracks, we tend to plow through the songs, and just go through it and then okay, on to the next one. We fuck up and there's like a thing that takes you out of the step by step. Carl said something really important, and it's we're rehearsing the right things, and practice is so much more valuable if you get through the steps or incrementally and don't have the bad stuff interrupting it, the mistakes interrupting it. So that's why we play scales at a lower tempo, play licks slowed down, and then speed them up and get up to speed so that you can learn the actual steps. I don't know what the science is on this thing, but having in there that when you're practicing and not refining it just kind of really defeats the effectiveness of the rehearsal. So it's okay to stop. I wish, I had told this to myself a lot of the time over the years, but, playback, if you're all just playing in the room, do whatever the hand signal is to go back to the head and get it. Hey, let's break down this 8-bar section where I have to do a fader move. And again, I'm sort of extrapolating, Alex, from what your actual situation was into more general things, but it is feeling like an important point to me in my heart about getting around the bad part and going through it correctly a couple of times and then moving on so that you're doing rehearsal. Turn the thing into muscle memory.
Awesome.
Ivan.
That's great. Thank you so much. Does anybody else want to throw in this, or do we want to change gear, change course? Talk about something else? We could talk about arpeggios. Let's talk about arpeggios. So, first thing I want you to do is I want you to listen to Philip Glass. And I want you to listen to Philip Glass. I want you to get in there and listen to Philip Glass. It's way beyond an arpeggio. It's Grim Welcome. What Philip Glass is doing is really, really complicated stuff. So first thing I want to talk about is the notes, and then the second thing I want to talk about as in the choice of notes and then the choice of rhythms. And then if there's two arpeggios, what they could be doing. And this is, I'm sort of stealing from the Book of Glass. So the first thing is that if you're, if you've got a something going on, you don't just have to play the notes in the chord. Like, there's so much stuff you could be doing. You, for example, could come up with, there might be 5 notes in the arpeggio, let's say, or 4 notes in the arpeggio. And 2 of them are in the chord, 2 of them are not, and one of them actually clashes. So it might be up by a semitone or something like that. So, for example, if you're playing like, if you're playing C, no, I'm going to say E. If you're an E, you play E and B, that's the 5th. But we're going to throw into there E, F natural, and B flat. So it's going to go E, F, B flat, B. So there's that semitonal movement. So immediately you have created something that is dark. It's creating a shape. It is instantly creating a shape. You might do something else where, depending what the chords are playing, you might come up with an arpeggiator. This is arguably when it's getting into a sequence, but I just don't give a fuck about arguing. Which is built off the 1st and the 5th of every chord you play in that in those chords. And you might also be doing something where you throw in a semitone just to knock it out a little bit. Because, a lot of people go, I really see it as, it's a comic book. Think of it like it's a comic book. It's a panel in a comic book. And the panel has a picture of a meteor crashing into a city. And then there's a person going, oh no, look, a meteor is about to crash into the city. And then you know how they have the narrator, comic thing? And it said, meanwhile, the meteor crashed into the city. And so much music does this where it's like, here's a picture of a meteor crashing into the city. And now here's the narrator saying, the meteor is crashing into the city. And now a person on the street is saying, the meteor is crashing into the city. And I think that chords and musicality in a lot of music does the same thing. It like, okay, the big block, what you could do is you could have the person on the street going, oh no, I'll never be able to fix the problem I have with my father because we're all going to die. And the narrator voice could be saying the huge baseball game was suddenly interrupted. So you're setting the scene that it's saying, okay, well, a whole bunch of people are going to die who are having a nice Saturday, and there's somebody is saying about something from a personal point of view as this meteor slams the city into the ground. My point is that people go, okay, well, my chords are D, G, A, and the arpeggiators are also saying DGA, and the vocals you are singing are also saying DGA. Everything's saying DGA. And you go, why is my music so two-dimensional and boring? Well, that might be it. So firstly, get rid of the damn chords and hint at the concept of DGA. Let the bass line and your vocals hint towards DGA. Because if you want to quantize the emotion of something really quickly, shove the chords down someone's throat and go, this is the emotional response I am expecting from you. Because chords are saying, here's the emotional response I want. I'm angry, I'm happy, I'm sad, whatever. That's what those big block chords do. Get rid of them. Secondly, so now we've got the bass line and the vocals hinting at those chords. In the chorus, sure, bring the chords in, but code them, for God's sake. Do something interesting. Next, with your arpeggiator, excuse me again, use that to paint, like if it's, I said DGA. DGA is really interesting because if you look at all the fifths on DGA, it's D, E, G, A. They're the fifths. So because it's D, it's sort of hinting at D. Let's do something weird, and let's go D, E, G, A flat, A. So I'm going to make an arpeggiator based on this. And this is going to be in 16ths, running up and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so what I don't like about that is that it's 8 notes. And 8 notes is going to fall back on the beat. So what I'm going to suggest is that it's just an upward line. That's 5/16. So now we're going to talk about the second really fun thing about I'm stealing from Philip Glass and his arpeggios is that instead of it sitting into 4, 8, or 16, it's going to go 5. So that means it's going to start tumbling over itself, and it's going to be, 5 bars before it falls back? So you are now, not only are you setting up a musical thing that is going, it is adding something a little different, a little darker to the scene, you're also setting up something rhythmic. Because if it's constantly falling out, if your brain is predicting it to be landing back on 4, you're going to get very bored of it very quickly because the brain's going to go, figured it out, okay, I'm bored with that, something new now, please. But if it's 5, the way it's shaping, thank you very much. Now, yes, Ivan, it's a polyrhythm. It starts to fall over itself. So, and something that would be really cool is even if you could have that running through the chorus as well. But here's something really, really cool that Philip Glass and Steve Reich did. Although Steve Reich's another one. His thing was phasing. So he'd take two things that were the same, and look up "It's Gonna Rain," and he moves one of them. They were tape loops, and one of them got moved out by a nanocron of a second. So what happens is that they start to chorus, then they fall out, then they become this fascinating noise based on a fragment of somebody saying "it's gonna rain," going down to "it's gonna," while the other one is out by non-musical amounts. And the way that you start hearing the voice, it was the beginning of granular synthesis. You start hearing the voice as a very complicated universe of sounds that when it's played off itself, you start hearing fascinating things within the voice. So Steve Reich, "It's Gonna Rain." I think it's called "It's Gonna Rain." Listen to it. And don't go, wow, this guy's just knocked something out of phase. Remember, it was the 60s. it was done on tape, and it was done by hand. So be aware of what you're listening to is extremely experimental, extremely brilliant, and it's doing something to your mind. That's Steve Reich, but more on Philip Glass. So we're going to steal something from Mr. Oh, thank you very much, Alex. I'm going to copy and paste this into the chat. So this is Steve Reich doing It's Gonna Rain. Booyah! And I'll make a note of that as well. Hold on a minute. So I'm going to now talk about offsetting a polyrhythm. Booyah. Okay. So what we're going to do is, as mentioned before, we've got a version of this arpeggiator, which for the sake of this is D, E, G, A flat, A. But now I'm going to make a version of that, which is 7. So what it's going to do is it's going to go D, E, A, G, A flat, A, C. In fact, I'm going to make a version which is 6. And this second version, I'm going to play it on top of the other one. So I'm going to have one of these, I'm going to use the same sound too. One of these is playing in 5, the other one is playing in 6. So they start tumbling and falling and cascading over each other. So some of the notes are going to clash, some of the notes are going to line up, some of them are not going to line up. So as a result, you are going to start hearing these two harmonic things that are constantly changing. It's on every 16th, it's going to make a new chord. Some chords work, some chords don't. And that's going to be the miracle of what we're aiming at here. That these two arpeggiators, as they're working off each other, they're clashing, they're working, they're not working. It's going to create a cloud of amazingness. Don't add delay. Sure, you can add a little bit of reverb. And if you want to do anything, change the decay time. Do not add delay. You are going to overcomplicate this, as if it's not already complicated as it is. Okay, great. So now we've got that thing going on. If we want to do something interesting towards the end, you know that 6 one that I had that was D, E, G, A flat, A, C. Doesn't really matter what the notes are. The point is that there's notes. Now I'm going to play it down. So one arpeggiator is going up and the other one's going down. Da 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 da. And they're working at same times, but they're also being offset. And if you want to pull this one, pull it after the, probably in the middle 8 or something, so that it starts moving and changing. Adding phaser or flanging, sure, that's really cool and that's really interesting. Or adding filter sweeps, oh yeah, baby, do those filter sweeps. But the thing to remember is that what we are trying to create is something, we are using these notes to paint abstract images over the top of your very simple painting. Simple good, but we're going to be painting a background that's terrifying. And the thing to remember is that when it's being played at the club or whatever, people are not going to say, oh wow, listen to the inharmonic relationship on that arpeggiator. They're not going to hear that. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, there's something about this track that does something weird to me. Pleasingly weird. That's what they're going to hear. This is about building an emotional response to your music. That's my thing on arpeggios, arpeggiators. I'm never sure, is it an arpeggio or arpeggiator? Or an arp? I don't know. So if anybody else would like to launch in on that rant, or a similar rant, or say, Carl, fuck off, this is what I think. Rezi, I want to hear, what are your thoughts on arpeggios?
The two things I always use it for is repeating my 8th notes on a single note without an octave shift. And of course, playing the root 3rd and 5th in 3 octaves up and down on a springy little synth sound. because that's what an arpeggiator sounds like. Tangerine Dream in my mind, and after all of the EBM decades. But as you were alluding to, Carl, the next steps are this really cool merging of harmony and melody. So your top line can be integrated with the rhythmic displacements into this weaving, emerging sort of single voice speaking the parts. And it reminds me of Travis picking on guitar also, because you get this sort of complicated interplay of the polyrhythmic features that you're alluding to, but also just that syncopation, like not even polyrhythmic, but just like off the beats kind of thing, accenting stuff. So one of the exercises or paths toward coming something satisfying and that works in a song is simplifying what you're listening to in the backing track, like just getting it down to kick and maybe an indication of what chord you're in, and playing it live. Of course, we didn't really make that distinction where you've got a not free running arpeggiator and a beat reference to listen to, and you're playing the chords, maybe root third, fifth, along with the chord changes, and you're getting that thing. And it's not describing any of the story that Carl is alluding to until you start adding in not just 1, 3, and 5, but 1, 2, 3, and 5. Now you've got a little bit of something in 1, 2, 3, fourth, so you've got that sus2, sus4 kind of tension notes coming into it, and it does start giving you that extra color. And now, since you've got that beat reference, number of notes you're holding down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many it is, you know where it's going to repeat, and you've got your arpeggiator set to either play it through 2 octaves or play it through 1 octave with repeating the low and high notes. So it's taking up exactly 8 eighth notes or 16 16th notes, and it's lining up on the beat. Or you can re-trigger at the right times so that those haunting tones of the second and the suspended notes, the second and fourth, land in the right places for your ideas and start really painting the top line and chord progression all with that one thing. It's kind of counterpoint. It's kind of classical, something that maybe Bach would have the two hands doing together in my mind. But yeah, there's some real cohesion that you can do when one apparent voice speaks the top line and harmony at the same time like that. And it's compositional tool like that, yeah, and a million other ways too. Leave it at that one and hopefully spark some other.
A million other ways. Thanks,
Yeah.
man. I really appreciate that. Alex.
I think an arpeggio is the figure itself, the musical figure, and an arpeggiator is the machine or the code or the circuitry that does it. Yeah, and I don't know, I never got really warm with them. I prefer to just sequence the figures outright and not use arpeggiators, because either the stuff that I do with them is really simple, or it doesn't do what I want it to do. Yeah, so I prefer to just sequence it in, but that's just my way of working, or my way of thinking.
Awesome. Thank you. Rezi, I see your hand again. I might jump in after you, Mr. Rez.
Yeah, sure. Alex, personal preferences aside, I mean, I end up writing these into the piano roll, as Ivan mentioned and as you mentioned, and then, fix it in the mix. But the sort of experimentation of seeing where the harmony tones hit the melody top line that you had in mind is also fun to improvise in a live way and maybe come up with some stuff for. I mean, and directing it as a composer is essential to my experience. It sounds like to yours also, but directing it as a performer also can be somewhat surprising and rewarding too.
This is really interesting because if I'm doing something in AngelSpit like this, AngelSpit, I don't use arpeggios. I use something similar often, and it's always on the piano roll. So it's a short sequence on the piano roll. Ice Planet 9000, I'm always using arpeggios, but they're not. They are, as per mentioned, weird combinations of notes that are very glass inspired. So what's something I love doing with an arpeggio, because part of the therapy of Ice Planet 9000 for me is letting go of control, setting up the machines to do something and just letting them do it. And I might be tweaking a few things, like dropping it into a sea of reverb, then pulling it back out, or making the decay of it longer so it's more buzzy in certain places. But something I really love doing is setting up 2 arpeggios that are on the sequences. I never play notes like that. Like, I'll pick the notes out, then I'll meticulously go through and choose where they'll be on the sequences, or use the beat step or something. And I'll send a random voltage, because on the dope for 155 you can change the length. So I'll set up an 8 arpeggio, and then at random times, like every 4 bars or something, I'll send a random signal to the dope and say, pick a number between 3 and 8. Okay, cool, 5. Now you're going to only play the first 5 notes, and you'll cycle through them. And that's something very fun about doing that sort of stuff. I think there is software version where you can do stuff like that, or I don't know. But yeah, Alex, go.
Yeah, I think you already described it, but what I sometimes do in software synthesizers, the modular, I have like 2 sequencers, and one is just for gates and the other one for pitches. And the gate one advances the pitched one. So, and the number of steps isn't the same, so it's more than 16 steps or 8 steps until the next time the sequence is the same, because like the number of steps doesn't match up, and so yeah, basically it creates more interesting sequences that way.
Tell me more. So
you have like one classical sequencer with just the pitches that you just circle through, and then you have like a gate sequencer. It can be a special gate sequencer or just a normal one where not every step is activated. So maybe you have not 16 but I don't know, 7 steps activated, and the one before the last isn't lit, and the gate sequencer is sending its gate to the clock input of the pitch sequencer. So you get a new step in that one only if a gate has been played. And so you get this repeating sequence of pitches, but that's not the same rhythmically. So it like shuffles around, which I find quite interesting and
that's
rewarding.
cool. I think I'm stealing that idea. Thank you.
Feel free to. And I think I'm not the only one who does that.
Okay, thank you. Razzie.
No, that's really some food for thought and really an engaging advanced tech. Decoupling one attribute of the note from the other, where one of your arpeggiators or step sequencers is running at one length, and the other one that's dictating the notes is running at another length, and you get 6 against 8 and 7 against these long evolving and changing, several bars of stuff. But it occurs to me that the things you can decouple are either the note length or the filter sweep or another timbral attribute, or maybe the octave or an LFO depth or something, but so that your secondary attribute that's not in phase with your note length, your notes arpeggio does, without having to program 32 bars of a curve, you can actually write in steps that cause it to be like a 32 bar long statement. It's really, I just wanted to sort of dwell on that and live in it for a moment. It's a great thought, as we've been talking about so far, locks all of the attributes of the notes to the length of the arpeggio rather than decoupling them. And I could see having like 3 step sequencers on your on the side of your modular system doing very different things to the notes at different lengths. It's great.
Thank you. Alex, did you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, just quickly, that's the reason why I only do that in software, because I don't have the money for like 2, 3 or 4 modular sequences.
I was speaking figuratively for myself, but modular system, I don't.
Yeah, I think that's like perfect because you don't have to pay extra for every module in software, and also they're not really CPU intensive, the sequence.
Okay, wow. Something I'll talk about Tangerine Dream for a bit. Something they do that I really love is and you guys, between Alex and Rezi, you guys talked about this, was changing the octaves. So, if the arpeggio, either the actual notes themselves go up an octave in this bit randomly, or there are two, VCOs making the sound, one of them goes up an octave or a fifth, it gets very interesting. Actually, arpeggios with fifths and stuff in it is fascinating. And another thing is obviously ratcheting, where you take a 16th and every now and then it'll start grinding on 30 seconds. And it's, I'm sure there's a software thingy to do it. I've got a hardware thingy to do it. And it's, the really wonderful thing about ratcheting is it's not just Kings, yes. It's not just the going from a 16th to a 32nd, because most, ARPs are 16ths, but also going to like 16th triplets, 12ths, stuff like that. You can create something very, very interesting, and then it might fall back to eighths or something like that. But once again, this is all random. If you want random. So that's a thought as well. Rezi, what you got?
Yeah, speaking of random, we haven't really gone back to the very basics of what pattern do you have selected in your arpeggiator. If you're holding down 1, 3, 5, 8 for notes, and that could line up root, third, fifth, eighth, just like that, and play it over and over and over. Or it may go back and forth and scan through it, root, third, 5, 8, 8, 5, 5. It may go low, high, middle, 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 and then back. It may randomly select from among the notes you have. And certainly you may want to tell it to play 1, 3, 5, 8 plus the octave 3, 5, 16, the thing 2 octaves above the root that you've selected. You want to have it play through 3 octaves for a really wide spanning thing. And indeed, in your software arpeggio selector dropdown in your DAW, there are several, maybe 15, 16 different up, down, up, in, out, left to right, or as played, so that it's 1, 5, 3, 8, or 1, 8, 3, 5. And it'll stick to that, but also transpose it through the octaves. Really, that's the fundamental playing with an arpeggiator stuff, holding down some notes, and the computerized system is stepping through them for you at the tempo you select. But the patterns which you can do that with, and the octaves you can have it go through, are where the variety happens, the surprise stuff.
Awesomeness. Cool. Alex, what you got?
Maybe a bit deviating from the topic, but again, on sequencers, one experimental thing that I liked, but it wasn't really musical, was to have one step sequencer control the speed of another step sequencer. It sounded really more sound design, kind of, not very musical, but it was like quite interesting. So if somebody's bored, that's something worth trying.
Yes. Apparently that's how Tangerine Dream did the ratcheting. Because on the Moog sequences, you can have the bottom line be the actual timing of each note. So you can actually program the, I think on the Moog ones, on the Moog sequences, I think that's what they are, the 906s, if I'm wrong, or whatever the fucking number is. I think there's a button you can flick that'll go, this is the timing of each sequencer, boog, boom, thing. And what's amazing about that is there's an opportunity for creating things that are falling out of time, which could be really fantastic. I could be wrong on that, I don't know, but that's fascinating to me. Resi.
I'm second guessing. I had a thing. I want to go into a deeper dive on figuring out what Tangerine Dream actually used, because there's the idea of the 8 steps available in your sequencer, so the next note you play drops the first one out, and then the next one subsequently that you play after that drops the next one out. So you end up evolving stuff over time just by adding a note on the end. But I'm not even sure how they did that or citing an example. But if anybody has one of specifically Dream performing live doing that style of sequencer arpeggiator control and how it lands, I'm interested.
Thank you for joining us, Ivan. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm sure there's YouTube videos about how they did their amazingness. I want to check that out. Alex, go.
I think there's special modules, and I think they had them, but I'm not quite sure. And also they spend a long time because they're still active with different people in there. But it's like Tangerine Dream are still performing live and such. Yeah, I think there's special ratcheting generators or such. I think, I don't know.
There are now. There's a bunch of them. Dopa has a really good one. But there's all these different tricks you can do as well to ratchet stuff. Really good tricks.
Carl, could you go into detail about the effect that you get with some of those ratcheting tricks? Just again, I know you touched on it, but I didn't fully appreciate which you were using and what the effect was.
Okay, so there's kind of one way to ratchet is like have a sequence, and the ratcheting is controlling the timing of each note. So let's say it's in eighths, and the ratcheting is receiving either you're twiddling a knob to select going to 12, 16ths, or 30 seconds, and you just select, or it can be receiving a control, a voltage control or a MIDI control that is changing its note. So that's one way of doing it, and it's bloody great. So it might be da 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 da, etc. The other way of doing it is by having the ratchet on the gate. So the notes, no matter what you do, are on the 8th, da 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 da. But if the ratchet is on a 16th, it becomes da 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 da. It plays the note twice, because instead of the note still exists over the 8th, but the envelope is on a 16th, so it's going to fire twice within the lifetime of that 8th note, right? Or if it's a 12th or a whatever, the ratcheting is going to go in, so it's going to be, instead of da 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 da, it might be da 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 da, or da 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 da. Gotta work with me on this, it's early. And either way can result in some really cool things. And you can program it in such a way that it's not random and it's well figured out and sorted out. Or you can do it randomly. And randomville to me is something very interesting. So there's a thought. And if anybody else wants to jump in on that, please, as mentioned before, there's a million ways to do this. And there are software versions of ratcheters, ratchetize, that are free and or very cheap. So go for it. Alex!
I know that on my Octatrack you can either have like bursts of triggers. So you say like this step has like 3 sub-triggers and so on, and then there's like but I think that's more for drums. And also it has an arpeggiator, which is sort of like a mini second sequencer, and there you can modulate the time of the second sequencer basically. And the last thing I wanted to say, I really enjoy it if music has something that puts it out of time, like electronic music has something that puts it out of time, and then the musician has to somehow move things along so it's back in time. And I think this gives it like a certain tension that I really appreciate.
a really interesting thing for me anyway is that I never actively, like in an arpeggiator, I always go, yeah, I want a keyboard that's got an arpeggiator on it, but I never use them. Like the Emaxes have got the best arpeggiator ever. Never use them. I got the Rev 2 specifically for the arpeggiator. Never use it. It's just a really weird thing I've noticed about me. Like, oh yeah, I love arpeggiators. I love using them. They're awesome. But I don't use them. It's just a thing. It's just an interesting observation. I'm not observing anymore. Razzie, save me!
Same.
Why is that?
I mean, the last time, like, advantageous or expedient to choose the arpeggiator built into the instrument was maybe 1989 or 3 or something, when you might not have had a computer already turned on. You know, DAW had, you know, a lot of selections to make, and you were already tempo synced to that anyway. But the fascination of, like, the Jupiter 4 has a random arpeggio setting, and, you know, I've heard that in my favorite app on the radio, so I want to do it. I want to do it too. The idea of getting a keyboard as an instrument that stands alone and is a thing that you make all your sounds with, or maybe you have two of them stacked up on a stand, kind of went away, you know, over the past 20 years. Like, our tone sources are from everywhere and to everywhere, so the same with our control sources. And when the piano roll is open, most of the time you're dicking around, and the tempo is already dictated by a master clock. Walking over to the thing that might also slave to isn't the most convenient way or most intuitive way to get a bunch of notes flying out of your system in the end. I mean, there's a lot more to it. I mean, there's probably as many people who always walk over to the keyboard that has the arpeggio just because they know that button sequence well and it feels right, and they swear it has a different feel. But I think those are some of the reasons for me anyway. The step sequencer idea also in the Pro 1 and the JX3P, historically, from my way back history, where the first I personally got into sort of arpeggios. Both of those are more programming in a sequence of notes blindly, just on steps, not really editable, and then you can transpose them by pressing once the sequence that you've entered in is playing back on the internal clock. But it's not definitely technically not an arpeggiator, but related. Anyway, thoughts?
Love it. Duran, Rio, Jupiter 8, Arpeggio. My God. Alex, go.
Yeah, for me it's easy why I don't use the inbuilt sequencer or arpeggiator much. More the arpeggiator than the sequencer, because both my computer as well as both hardware sequencers I have are one more powerful, and the second they're easier to use. So I can just go in there, and usually with keyboard sequencers you have to like think about it and put in the notes individually, and with the other ones it's just either play it in or just ta-da-da-da-dun, or quickly draw it in, and it's much faster and much easier and much more powerful. The only thing where I think it's more advantageous to use the inbuilt one is if you have like motion sequencing of certain parameters, and you don't want to be constricted by the MIDI input as how many messages you send at once. So you might get timing issues if you modulate too much or sequence too much. That might be a problem. Other than that, I think I wouldn't use it.
Cool. Very cool. That's awesome. Do we want to talk more about arpeggios, or do we want to change the subject and talk about something else?
It's a fine line between arpeggiated and sequenced.
It is. It really is. And I have a feeling about what I'm talking about is actually a sequence. But then again,
for my money, if it's repeating a pattern on a chord that you're holding down automatically, definitely an arpeggiator. And by the musical definition, if it's not playing your harmony all at once, it's playing them individually, it's an arpeggio. So we're still in the realm. We're not talking about playing a chord over and over, and we're talking about spreading the notes out and displacing them in time. So I think we're okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, does anybody want to talk about anything else amazing, or are we going to go back to Alex?
This is maybe a small thing, but I started using mind maps for music stuff, and I think it helped me to not to be so lost in what to do next. It's more like, okay, now I want to start the task here, and other than that, I'm just, I want to do music stuff. I don't know, where should I start? And then I never start because I don't know what I should want to do.
I want to hear more about this.
Yeah, I just, if you have like an iPad, iPhone, or wherever, there's like this free mind mapping app, but I think there are other ones that are free for your PC, and you don't have to use this particular one. But I just tried it out, and I did a mind map for my music stuff and had like my goals, and then I had like subtasks in each from each goal, and sometimes several goals had the same subtask, and it is spread out again into even smaller tasks. And yeah, it helps me to get, it's like a literal map, and I attack on this end and I start there, and I don't know, it really helps me to conceptualize things, because I usually have so much stuff scrolling around in my head that I have trouble to find what I need to do in the moment.
Okay, this is very interesting to me. So I see Rezi go. Alex, do you want to keep going on that, or all right, Rezi, go?
No, I just wanted to applaud and like reinforce the whole idea. Doing it on a computer is great. I think Son invented it and insists that you must do it in your own hand on a piece of paper with multicolored pens, and that's a big part of the value of it. But honestly, getting that stuff into a mind map with the hierarchy means that you can instantly export that to an outline, which can be then a chart timelines, or you can copy paste the things and use them in other contexts, or you're doing it in a system that already allows you to change it from a mind map to an outline. So I find a lot of power in that. But I will also say, awesome, Alex, the real power is in you, because you decided to do it and you took the step to contextualize your thoughts into a visual and take actions on them. And if I can offer any kind of encouragement for all the times that I have ignored trying to do that myself, then good on you. I'm really glad to hear that. And can you talk a little bit about your approach to doing the mind map? Simplicity, complexity, depth, stuff like that?
So for me, first of all, I think for me the digital one is much better, because I hate my handwriting and I sometimes can't read it. And the second one is, in digital I don't run out of paper, because that's also sometimes a struggle, because you want to add something but there's no room in the margin. My approach was, in the past, that I just wanted to have like make perfect sense and be like ideal in its structure and so on, and now I just write stuff that comes to mind without just how I feel like it. I think that's the right approach, because before that I would spend much more time thinking about how the mind map should be instead of actually doing the thing, and I realized that that's a trap for myself I need to avoid. So just vomiting everything out in a way that makes sense, and in the end you can just move things around. That's also something that I like about the digital approach, that you can just move the thing and move it somewhere else.
This is great. Keep talking about this. I love this. Go.
I think, yeah, broaching the actually doing it is part of the reinforcing strength of the idea. Like it's almost a I don't know what the word is. It's not a red herring, but the there's a cinematic term for the thing that you think the story is about, but it's not about that at all. And the mind map is a tool and it gets you there, but the real journey is that you thought about stuff, you attended to your own mental process of what do I want to do with my music, and made that decision to not get hung up in minutia of what goes into this thing? Should I censor myself? Man, is this thought good enough to put into it? But instead going the path of transferring capricious emotional states into something you can look back on and later deal with filtering it. Like, that's your inbox. Good. Awesome. That's all.
This is great. I love this. I was going to throw it to Vince in a second because it looks like Vince is about to say something amazing. Oh, but first I want to throw it to Alex.
Yeah, maybe where I still struggle with this approach is with things I don't know yet. For example, how songs are called or what I want to do with things, but I think I just need to add a question mark or something. That's what I wanted to add.
Cool. I love it. Vince, did you want to jump in? I want to hear your voice.
Actually, I was not going to jump in. I was just searching for something on my desk because I just put a USB drive into my computer, and then that USB port quit working immediately after I put that drive in, and it's not working with any of the other ones I just tested.
Okay, cool.
So I ran into a technical difficulty in the middle. I just found a bunch of old files with stuff that I never released, so I'm going to release those shortly in the future. But I was also testing the rest of my USB drives that I found, and apparently one of them had something in it. And when I put it in the computer, it knocked that loose, and now that's in the USB port in the computer. So I got to figure out how to get it out of there.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Does anybody else want to jump in on this? Because this is so interesting. Although I have a question, and that is, are you guys familiar with the musical project management thing that I have?
I think so, yeah.
You know, where you put the little percentages into everything, and is that similar to a mind map, or is a mind map completely different?
Mind map is just like having a word in the middle and then drawing lines connecting it, and that's how you symbolize relationships. And you can draw maybe arrows to maybe show that it's like a priority or a flow. But I think the key is to just use it as you like it and not to think too much about it, because the main thing is to get your mind, your thoughts into order.
Fascinating. Rezi, did I see your hand up for a second?
Yeah, I was gonna basically paste in a Wikipedia mental note of it's an established thing, but Alex really said it in his own way better. Part of the philosophy that's codified by a guy who published a book, so with those things, it's got his preferences built in, but it is very different than a spreadsheet in most ways. It's sort of intentionally different than in that the shapes and areas and spaces and colors and size of things that you use can indicate other things to future self. So he encourages, I think, and I may be misrepresenting this a little bit, but having a bunch of colored pencils and crayons out, and you can be expressive and broad with your gestures as you're making this mind map. So yes, it's hierarchical, major tasks branching off into steps of achieving them, or however you want your hierarchy to go. But it is not grid-like with really percentages of achievement in the same way a spreadsheet can be, or a Gantt chart. It's sort of, I think his conceit is that this is for flighty creatives to embrace their inner doodler instead of ratcheted down numbers people doing things in a grid. Of course, we know there's value to both, and there's the fundamental thing that I was talking about right off the jump was you can then turn in a iPad program, all of your doodles and stuff are connected by pipes and bars, which represent the hierarchy, so you can turn it into a spreadsheet very easily in the end and come away with exactly what you're talking about, a thing with tasks and percentages and stuff. But the relational aspect is kind of that.
That's
the
really
hand-drawn shit.
That's great. I love this. I was actually just looking at them, and I'm downloading one on my phone. Alex, I see your hand go.
I tried your spreadsheet, and I think my problem with it is it doesn't work for me, and I think my problem is that I'm just not an experienced enough songwriter to actually say how much I'm done, because I only know when I'm done if my gut tells me that I'm done. So if I had to put in a percentage, it's like, I don't know.
Sure. That's really interesting because you're absolutely right. The only thing that's going to tell you when something's done is when your gut says it's done. As far as that thing goes, as you feel that you're pushing towards it, put numbers in there. And I guess with experience, you start knowing that baseline's getting there. So I'll call it 30%. Oh, it's getting there a bit more. I'll call it 50% now. Yeah, it's kind of done. 70%. Yeah, that thing's done. 100%. Or really 90%, because I only call things 100% once it's going to, like, the final mix is done. But I digress. But no, man, you speak the truth. It really comes down to what your gut says.
The lesson that I've learned with such tools is that you need to make them fit to yourself, because I try to follow them the way they're presented, and I thought that was the best way, and I lost interest. And since I stopped being so serious about exactly following it and try to make it work for me, it's been much better. I still have problem with things, but that was like the key that helped me a bit more, be more successful with such things.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, cool. Do we want to talk about something else? We kind of got to the end of that one, and that was good. Don't get me wrong. What else? What else do you want to talk about? Or if we're out of ideas, Resi, I see your hand.
This one's optional, if you wouldn't mind. Just sort of brought up the topic of your process, and we're now after the songwriting stuff at that point where you can pretty confidently say you're at 100% for some of the songs on the album, remixes and reinterpretations notwithstanding. Want to share? Would you mind sharing a little bit of what you alluded to at the beginning of our chat today with good reviews and promo stuff, and how you decided what to do and what efforts you put into getting some of those responses?
Okay.
Anything about there?
The feedback that is the most important to me is from my supporters, and that seems to be quite positive. And I am blessed to have supporters who will say, didn't like this one much. And they'll be honest. They'll be nice honest. But the feedback is that, the press tagline for it was the most brutal one to date, and everyone's going, yeah, it's pretty damn brutal. And I'm glad that people are hearing the musicality and the lyrics and all of that. That's still, it's just not me screaming and distorted noise. Nothing wrong with screaming and distorted noise, though. I have a press list, and it's funny that with that press list, I've disseminated it down to maybe 8 press outlets that matter. Most of them charge. And the ones that don't charge, I usually throw them a tip, because that's just the reality of the press these days. The press has been okay. It's been... I think the best thing you can have is a review that goes, this is the greatest album ever written, and then another review saying, this is the worst album ever written. That is the best. That is the best you can get. You don't want mediocre. Oh my God. The thing about press is you have to really ride them and constantly go, hey, did you get my thing? Hey, did you get my thing? Like I have like the press list of stuff that I send out, and if they don't, it's via, email software. And if they don't open it, then I'll send it again like 3 days later and hope for the best. But then there are these other ones who are like, I have to ride them. Because increasingly press is really difficult, and increasingly press isn't there because press went away because of the whole financial structure of everything changed. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. yeah, just pushing and promoting and stuff like that. And I will be probably doing that for a long time indeed. As I just got the USB keys and I released the thing about how to unlock the USB key, that went over quite well. But yeah, so people are good, happy, I guess. That didn't answer your question at all, did it?
I mean, you touched on it right off the top, though, about who's important to hear from and what you meant by response, even. Like, you sort of bent my brain a little bit about what it means to have a response. It's certainly not how many one-paragraph things at the end of press you got because of the ad you bought. But
yeah, right? Another thing is that the replies, DJ plays are really interesting as well. That I've built up a relationship with quite a few DJs over a long time who are going to go, oh yeah, this is great. Not so much club DJs, because what I do is not really club music. But yeah, and also stuff that's getting added to Spotify as well, Spotify playlists, like from users. And the response there's been really good. So, from what I can tell, radio and end users like it. And what's fascinating is that the album was a really big risk for me, that I know that A plus B plus C equals a track/album that will sell well and get responded to well, but on this one I went, fuck it. I just did, you know, excuse me, I want lyrics that are good and choruses that are good and bass lines that are good and all that, because that's what I want. But I didn't do that for marketing reasons. I did that because I like that. But I don't know. It was good. I'm happy. And it's sort of it's very easy as a musician to go, people won't like my stuff because it's not following the rules. It's not going to get played in an EBM club. It's not whatever. So therefore, should I change what I do so I can fit in with people who I don't really care about anyway? And the answer to that is no, do not do that. Because what your taste is, the thing you are selling is your taste, your choices. That's what you're selling. The music is an absolute reflection of your taste and your choice. There's a whole bunch of people who share your taste and your choices. So therefore, they're going to like your music too. And as soon as you start second guessing or guessing what other people do, it's not real. And you'll only get 1 or 2 or 3 albums out of that. And I'll just really quickly say that I had a very excellent conversation recently with someone who's a good friend, signed to a record label whose name I won't mention, and his one of his other bands got signed to that label. And I've had an eye on it because when they were going, oh, we're going to get signed to that label, and I said, I don't think it's worth doing that because they're going to take a big cut of money and they're not going to do anything. And they go, oh, but it's a name and it really means something, and you know, da-da-da-da-da. And I said, okay, but just realize you're basically giving them a whole bunch of money and they're not going to do anything. Or, you know, you could ask a whole bunch of people and get advice and do it yourself and it'll be free. And then that came down to, but I don't have time to do admin, and that's when I walked away from the conversation. Because if you don't have time to do admin and shit like that, you don't have time to do music professionally. You're not serious. Whoa, I just said that. So anyway, I bumped into him at a club, and during one of those yelling club conversations you have, how's it going with that band? Because I've been watching the numbers on Spotify and BANDCAMP and all that, and they're doing jack shit. I've been having an eye on, because if you want to like spy on a band, it's the easiest thing in the world to do. There are certain websites you can go to research the metric of those bands and to keep an eye on what they're doing. And I've been keeping an eye on their band, and it's like, he said, you know, signing to that label did absolutely nothing. And I went, wow, really? And he goes, yeah. Because they're not getting played to DJs. They're not getting played to podcasts. They're not getting, they're getting like 500 plays a month on Spotify, and this big amazing label who everybody's heard of did jack shit. They should be getting like 10,000 plays a month on Spotify, because it's in the label's best interest to do that, because the label's taking 50% of their Spotify royalties. They're taking 50% of their Bandcamp royalties. It's free money. It's a free product for them. Oh my God. But no. And if you want to see how a band's doing on Bandcamp, you just click on the album and it'll tell you how many people bought the album. It's right there. God, I wish you could hide that number, but you can't. So, yeah, don't sign, because it's a waste of your fucking time. And if you can't do it yourself, just don't do it. Like we said last week, it's this game. You've got to think of it like it's a strategy game where you and a bunch of dwarves and elves are going off to Mordor to throw a ring into a lake of fire. That's the game. And you've got rock points, life points, stamina points, who give a fuck points. And as you go along your merry journey, you're spending and recouping these points. And the objective is to get to Mordor and throw your fucking album into the ring of rock so motherfuckers are going to hear it. That's the name of the game. Carl just went on a rant just then. But it's one hell of an exhausting journey, let me fucking tell you. And you've got to have a to-do list where... And it's got to be broken down by dates where it doesn't matter if you fucking feel like it or not, you're doing this today. You're going to be making some pimp on Facebook, hey, check out my new album. Whether you want to or not. Ta-da! Okay, that's me. Someone else go. Anyone? Anyone?
Maybe the best things I've seen from labels what they did was PC music. They have like, I feel like they're really aggressively pushing their new artists. They in the Discord, and
who is?
Of course, like PC music. I don't know. I forgot the name of the artist, but this label, they are like a collective for hyperpop.
For what sort of music?
They got like hyperpop.
I don't even know what that is.
Think Warp for experimental pop music.
I don't even know what that is. But anyway, don't bother explaining to me that. I'll just nod my head and go. Oh,
yeah, basically they do tons of community events. They for example, they gave out for the release of a new artist like made a competition with like one of those word puzzles, and they had like a live stream where you had to find as many words as you can, and the winner got, I don't know, a free CD or something. And they do events like that, and I also feel like they couple their newer artists with their established artists, so they try to capitalize on that synergy, and I think that's like the most I've seen, or the most innovative things I've seen a label do in recent years. I don't know if it works because I don't know the numbers, and I haven't checked, but I feel like there seems to be a lot going on with that label.
Awesome. That's great, and following that sort of thing is really good, and getting ideas for how to do that is also really good. And this is where we come to the point. I'm glad that I don't have to take any care of any form of advertising, says Megamorph. What I was just saying, it would be so amazing to have a collective of people who you can trust, and that's my thing, and could put up with you because you're a bastard who cracks the whip. That I do all the time, constantly, which is why I'm not in a collective, because people fucking hate me, because I crack the whip, because most people are fucking lazy and don't want to do the work. Anyway, so it whips the llama's ass. Okay, sure. Don't understand, but Diana finds that funny, so that's great. Okay, I don't understand. They're making jokes and I don't get them. But so my point is that trying to get into a collective like this one, I guess, where we sit around and talk and exchange ideas is the beginning. But ultimately, I believe the hard fucking yakka work comes down to you. It comes down to you and what you do. So, yeah. And it's not fun. That's the thing. That is the dividing force. It's not fun. People think it's fun. It's not fun. It's grueling, shitty work where you go, I hate my music, I hate myself, I hate this all, I'm bored, everybody's bored, I don't know what to do, I hate this, and you stop. But the minute you stop, you're dead. You're done. Gotta keep swimming because you're a shark. Alex!
Shark.
I don't know nothing, so take it with a grain of salt, but I think this stuff is so mind-numbing because of the way social media is structured, and trying to promote yourself on there feels like shouting into the void, especially if you don't have many followers. And I think the best thing you can do is to build alternative structures wherever you can. Again, I don't know nothing, so take it with a grain of salt, but that's what I've read and what I also feel like makes sense.
Well, for someone who
Because,
doesn't know anything, you just nailed it. I think you nailed it. Yeah, go ahead. I interrupted you.
No, I think that was basically it. So, because they want to just up the level or the value of their brand, their company, and they are not looking out for you. Yeah, when you can make a offline email list or own website, or I mean, Discord is still owned by another company, but you have almost full control about your server. So I think that's also a great way to build a community that is not like driven by an algorithm. So you're not at the mercy of that.
Yeah. That's the fucking truth, man. Rezi, what you got?
Like you said, Alex nailed it. I mean, between giving yourself some accountability and pressure and hanging out with people who are like-minded and are talking about their work and living in it and existing in it, hopefully there's some amount of your personality, and I'm going to say that's a good percentage of what I'm here for, is taking the peer pressure. There's people doing stuff, and you're talking about doing stuff rather than not doing stuff. Those are the two polar opposites. And Carl, you mentioned getting on the places and saying you've got a thing, you know. But I also want to underscore, you've done a lot of creative work, which I assume isn't also the slog, to prime yourself to have something to talk about. All of the brilliant promotional stuff, the ancillary supporting visual and real fabric objects that you created in your work give you more of a story to talk about and things to share and do. And hopefully that's what buoys you and gives you something to do in those moments when you're interacting with a person. And maybe taking it a bit of what's just nailed is it's not a matter of not taking it too seriously, but finding a balance between the things that you have already registered as really dire and crucial, and if you don't do them, you're going to as a failure, and just integrating patterns and behaviors and peer pressure and supporting scene stuff into your daily whatever the thing that you tell yourself and live and experience. So in a way, it's like, yeah, relying on what everybody else is doing and having some amount of a positive current that you're in, so that it's not all you pushing this slog and all you feeling the burden of how difficult it is to a lot of the work that takes concentrating on a task for a long time and remembering steps, which for certain types of people are incredibly difficult and don't come naturally. And I kind of wish Eric to talk about it, because I see him as, he may not be this, somebody who doesn't necessarily have those problems. And if I get to see him as that, I'm interested in whether he experiences it that way. his work with Spank the Nun and the way he talks about some of that stuff seem to suggest that maybe he has a different mindset and a different neuro makeup about that than I think a lot of us do. But I just also wanted to underscore, Carl, I hear you, really living this with some of the difficulty and pressure, perhaps, of switching from I'm done with the album to the publicity. But to anybody else, you're doing an amazing job, and it's, like the internal stuff is invisible. We don't see that. It's good to hear about it here and support you and support us with the fact that it is difficult and a struggle, because it doesn't look that way at all.
I think it's thank you. I think it's really important that in our Art of Rock conversations that the struggle is made real, because the problem with the internet is that it's just glamour, glamour, glamour. I'm getting paid. It's so good. Look at me. Oh my God, I'm so good. Look at me. And I want to be really open and honest with people and say, no, actually, this is really fucking hard. And if you're struggling right now, that's normal. If you feel like giving up, that's kind of normal. Because this is so hard. And I, every time people come on here, I like them to, I don't want to hear about your wins, because we can read social media and it's all about win, win, win and how awesome I am and how awesome my band is. When it's here, I want to hear about the bruises and the calluses and the fail. Because you learn about fail. Fail is what teaches you. It builds the muscles. Success is, everything's just so good. And I'm kind of tired about that shit. So, keep it fucking real. Please. And we do, and I'm grateful for that. Alex?
Yeah, I think also part of it is it's hard to do all that admin stuff as one person. But I think what you would say is that probably it's also not easy to find someone who's equally enthusiastic and hardworking as you if you collaborate.
Yeah. Also, it's like collaboration on a business thing is really interesting, because it's like this, different people come into it for different reasons. Like, okay, Diane, I'm going to pick on MTV TV. MTV TV about pushing the community, and they are selfless. And that is so amazingly rare. Who did we just lose? Oh, we lost Vince. Bye, Vince. Love you. It's extremely rare to find people who are going, and Tiger Squawk's another one, Brian Gossicle's Gasoline Invertebrate, just wants to help. And there's really nothing in it for them. They want to help, they want to mentor, they want to lead, they want to build the community. These are the people you want to work with, because everybody else has got an ulterior motive. Like we've all got ulterior motives, okay? But some ulterior motives are a bit like, I want to work with your band because I want my band to get further. Don't work with people like that. Because they got a knife and it's going to end up in your back. You want to work with someone and say, hey, look, I'm similar to you, you're similar to me. You and me together can create something that is, it's not you plus me, it's you plus me plus something magical. It's greater than the sum of our parts. And I find it, me personally, I found it impossible finding people who want to, and ultimately you want those people in your band. But, then you see their Instagram and it's just pictures of them. Pictures, I'm working with this band, as opposed to, hey, now we are doing this thing. Check out the thing that we are doing, because we are a unified front. We are a bunch of pirates on a ship, and we want to talk about the ship and what the ship does, as opposed to each individual pirate, if that makes sense. Resi, go.
I think one thing to also keep in mind exactly on that topic is the myth of the coordinated band myth, I say, sort of tipping my hand there. The concept of the coordinated band of lads from uni or whatever that made it through all the way to the big leagues is vanishingly slim, small, tiny sliver of what actually happens. And usually in an organization, you've got a person that feels they're bearing the responsibility of whatever it is. I mean, the brunt of the, the bruises and sling punches and stuff. And because they are. And there's, it's not like exactly learned helplessness, but there's an allowing yourself to be the person that shit rolls downhill to, or that all the responsibility falls on, because you own it, because you feel it, definitely ends up being an isolating factor in a lot of ways. But I think you can imagine some of the ways if you're not experiencing it. But yeah, what you're both saying about community and fighting that and finding ways to not necessarily collaborate, because what we're talking about today in this part of the conversation isn't how to collaborate. It's just the sheer act of talking about the process and what we do, and another hour or two to live in the moment and get our thoughts aligned with our goals. And Alex with drawing it out in mind maps, and Carl with talking specifically about the struggle and promotion, and those are all excellent things to consider. And man, I hate the phrase, but carry on through our day with that changed perspective. But yeah, I'm definitely straying from a focused point of that. But I'll just let me end it there, because I'm going to change topics if
I used to work with a musician, guitarist, and I said to this guitarist, if you pimped ANGELSPIT merch on your social medias, which are banging, which are like they are there, they are existing, there is a lot going on, people listen to you and engage with you. If you twice a week pimped ANGELSPIT merch, hey, go buy this CD, hey, go buy this t-shirt, twice a week, I could afford to not only take you on tour, but I could probably afford for you and to leave your job, and then you work for ANGELSPIT full time. And that wouldn't be as a guitarist. You're going to be helping me with merch, you're going to be doing this stuff, but it would be full time. And it would be a wage equal to the job you're paying now, because it was a shit job and she didn't get insurance, so great. No. Oh, yeah, that's a really cool idea. But before the first thing even got posted, it was, I don't want my fans and my friends seeing all this stuff all the time, and I'm banging them over the head with this thing, and da-da-da-da-da. And I went, okay, well, oh well. And then it was like, hey, but I'm really interested in working full time for you. And it's like, well, how am I going to pay you? Because what I am talking about is publicity, is the growth of the band, is money. So I can pay you. I ain't getting anything out of this. Those t-shirts and everything is going into your wage. And then how am I supposed to take you on tour now, because I can't afford to buy the flights to Europe or whatever, because you don't want to look bad at your friends and everybody who's mostly following you, because you are actually a musician. And that attitude I've seen constantly. Like, I see it all the time. People who think that, I don't know, they, it's like they watch one of those rock and roll movies about how Queen just suddenly magically happened. Fuck you, record label, we're Queen. Or all of those, and they went, oh, that's what it's like. I just don't know. It's just such a mystery to me. I just wish I could live in their reality. Like, I really wish I could live in that amazing reality that person lives in. Or every time I go to a club and someone's shooting their mouth off about their band, I pull out that app and I look at what their band is like on. I look at their metrics and it's like, dude, you need to keep your mouth shut because you have nothing to be bragging about. In fact, you should be at home working on your music right now. But anyway, so I digress, and that got a bit dark. I apologize. The moral of the story is your work. Going to Mordor is hard. Did you notice how the eagles didn't help them? Fly, you fool, said Gandalf. Well, unfortunately, our phone line to the eagles is now falling into the abyss to deal with a Balrog. So looks like we have to walk. And then, you know, you get the eagles on the way home. But going to Mordor sucks. Really sucks. And the companions you're with, they're either aggravating or they want to kill you. So, dude, I'm telling you, man, that thing is just about being in a band. And then you're always going past these castles of these massive Death Lords in their crazy castles of their light shows and their plethora of orc fucking fans who are marching to the beat of their drum. And you're sneaking around them so you can go do your mission, only to deal with Shelob. Should I stop right now? Lord of the Rings is metal. Anyway, so that's what I got. Does anybody want to talk about someone else? Or should we go to MTV TV? Yes. Yeah, Hack just summed it up. You want to build a fellowship, not have a so-called guide who eventually betrays you, mauls you, and bites your finger off. I mean, hypothetically. That's really interesting. Maybe Gollum was the record label guy. Maybe it was about Sam and Frodo were in a band. Now let's think about this. Gollum, and then when they got noticed, because they had a hit, which was the ring, and Gollum went, basically, I want everything that represents. I'm going to guide you through this. Not really having a clue where they're going themselves. Maybe actually Gollum was not a record label guy, but was that LA guitarist who thinks they're hot shit. Oh man, I know all these people and they're really going to help. I know these people. All you have to do is do them a favor. Maybe that's it. Yeah. And meanwhile, your very supportive friends and Aragorn are doing their thing, which ultimately accounts for jack shit. And the Great Wizard, you know, he didn't do anything. Like, really, he didn't. But anyway, it was a great story. So does anybody else want to jump in at this point and save me? Or should we go to MTV TV? I see a hand.
Quick last one. Anybody using prompters or lyric sheets or anything on stage anytime?
Yeah. Are you kidding me?
Right. I mean, I haven't drawn one up in a while, but I used to do like whatever the word that was different in each verse that I remember. I'd just write that really large verse one, this word, verse two, this word, and the rest of it was kind of like too small to see, but I could glance down at that. I'd have like 3 or 4 of those per song. What's yours?
Mine is on the set list. It's the first few words of each verse.
But I mean, like, Ozzy's using a full-on brand teleprompter
so do you order
on the stage. So yeah, I mean, it's legit. You can do that if you're over 50.
Well, that's the great thing as well, is that if you're using a Mac or like a laptop, which who isn't, you've also got a prompter on there. I used to have the iPad set up, and I would have it right next to the camera, so the camera was there and the iPad was there. Yeah, that was a disaster. I apologize about my Wuthering Heights live stream. I wanted to do something cool, but I failed. Anyway, so I used to have the teleprompter right there, and I could just go from song to song and scroll through it, because I always forget lyrics. It's terrible. A very important.
Okay, well, I'll keep that in mind.
Important lesson I've learned is that if you forget the lyrics, and you're singing like this, accidentally pull the mic stand up, and then plug it back in, and you remember the lyrics.
If you're lucky, there's somebody in the audience that also
hand the
so
microphone
you just
to
watch
someone.
what they're doing.
Yeah. Alex, go.
Lyrics are brutal because I really need to memorize them in order to sing at my best, because if I'm reading, I'm like half my capacity is just reading the words. And and then sometimes I forget something and I try to look it up and then I stumble because I need to look up where I am, and it's a disaster. And it's hard. If any one of you has like tips on finding back the.
No, that is exactly. It is hard. It is distracting. I would do the one word. I try to make it obvious that this is the only word. And there's, to be honest, one song that was difficult because there's very similar verses and there's a bit of a phrase that would change between them. I think I can't remember exactly which one it was, but I would leave the blocks of lyrics in place for duration on a sheet, a regular piece of paper, printed sideways so that there was more room and less space, and then not intentionally. So it's intended that I could not see the verse lyrics, but the word that was the key word or two words phrase large enough to see, if it's taped to the floor wedge or on the stage, just a glance. And no way that I could read it so that it wasn't tempting to do, but to prime myself for that's the key word that really helps me remember what happens in verse 2. I'm on it. Here's verse 2.
That's a really good idea.
And I've actually seen quite a few bands with their backing visuals have the lyrics in them. So, and every now and then they'll just turn around like, yeah, I'm rocking out to where the drums should be, but I'm actually reading the lyrics because I forgot.
I have definitely done that for sure. And related song cues where the entrances and stuff might not be totally obvious and you're using backing tracks, I always put a cue in there. Like it may not be in the original song, but there'll be something that I change. This is the 4-bar count for the verse. Like nobody knows what it is, but it's a prominent feature. If there's a non-rhythmic section where you have to come back in on a time, here's my cue. Nobody noticed it, but things like that. And
Yeah, that's good. Alex.
Yeah, I read a thing about backing tracks, and some bands have like someone in their in-ears just saying chorus in 3, 2, 1, go. And of course you don't hear that, but I found that really funny because it's so obvious, but I read that to understand.
I've done that. I've worked with drummers before where it's chorus in 3, 2, 1, go. Standing by for chorus, boom. I don't know why that is. Well, I do know. I guess it's kind of complicated or something, but it does help, and it's actually kind of common. Also, a lot of times drummers come in, they've only rehearsed like 2 or 3 times because they're, revolving door. But nevertheless, it's also a good thing for vocalists because vocalists always forget. What's the difference between a drummer and a drum machine? You only have to punch the song into a drum machine once. Thank you very much. Did we want to talk about anything else, or do we want to raid on over to MTV TV? Whenever Carl starts busting out really bad jokes, I guess it's time to raid. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Just remember, same time next week, join us here on ANGELSPIT'S Twitch. It's also on the YouTube and everywhere else, but like I said, ANGELSPIT'S Twitch is better because we can raid to MTV TV. This is brought to you by ANGELSPIT'S Patreon. It's only $3 a month, and you're helping me out, and you get a whole bunch of free stuff. Like every time I release something, it's yours for free. If you're bored, go check out the new album, which is brutal, and everybody says it's brutal, so that's good. And right now, hold on, not just quite yet right now, copy and paste this because this is the Industrial Incisions playlist. bunch of bands here on it, bunch of new bands, bunch of old bands. But then Vince suddenly interrupted me. Vince, go.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that speaking of Patreon, since you said it, it reminded me. Mid to late next month, mine will be active again because I had to shut it down for a minute because actually I'm going to be a grandfather.
Oh my God,
is what
congrats.
happened. My son's pregnant partner just moved into the house with us, and I had to take almost a whole month off to prep the house to have ready for an extra person to move in. So I haven't been here for a minute. I'll be back here more often. I'm back to work on stuff so I can start the Patreon up again as soon as I've got a little extra content to put on there, which is nice because I just found this. I've got a 4-track EP that I completely forgot about from 2009 that I never released, and I just found it. And I'm going to run it through a couple of things and remaster it and probably use the tracks on this for the new album.
Vince, when your Patreon is...
Actually, fits it really well. It's what I was testing while I was sitting here.
Awesome. When your Patreon is go, let me know the link and I'll mention it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hey, when we get off, I want to talk to you about Patreons. I have some secret Patreon wisdom. But for now, unless there's anything else, did I just cut you off?
No, you're good. I just wanted to say that I will be back here as often as possible in the future now because I was not here for a while, and Patreon will be back up and running soon. The album is still under production. I just had to take a break because I got hit with big news that I was not a fan of. Like, it's growing on me now, the idea, but like it's
awesome.
Be reminded that you're officially old is never fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. MTV TV also has a Patreon. Go get on it and hang around because I want to talk to you about Patreons. But right now we are going to raid onto MTV TV. So we're going to raid on over there now because it's bloody awesome. Diana, if you could set that raid up, I would be the happiest man in the world. You guys rock. Thank you for being part of this. We will see you again next week. You are bloody awesome.